I gotta have Kakyoin in every video I do that is like this. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, so this is part 2 of the stick modding tutorial guide thing that I did. If you watched the first part, then you know how to change the buttons. You also know how to open up your stick. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be taking a look at the levers and changing the artwork. And I'm going to show you how to do that on the Quanba Obsidian. I don't have the Panthera now. I gave it back to my friend to permanently borrow again. But even then, it wouldn't serve the purpose of this video, which is to change the artwork. There's already a tutorial. There's probably several on how to do that. And I've already said it a couple times. You take a heat gun, you get rid of the artwork. So the first thing we're going to cover before we do the artwork, because that involves probably the most work besides, that involves like the most work. We're going to be talking about levers. That's what we call these things. That's what we call the sticks. We call them levers. There are multiple sticks that you can buy on the market, and here are the 4 most popular, though I'm not too sure about one of them. So the 2 most popular are Sanwa and Seimitsu. They're both Japanese, what we call Japanese levers. Typically they are ball top, so that means they have a little ball at the top. That's where you grab it. And really the difference between the 2 is that one is more responsive than the other, kind of. One of them feels a little bit more loose, and one of them feels a little bit more stiff. There's a little bit more resistance in one of them. The other difference used to be that Seimitsu used Panasonic micro switches, which are these little things that are down here. Actually, it's better if I showed you on here. These little things. Seimitsu used to use Panasonic. They no longer make micro switches anymore. And every other brand besides the American lever used Omron switches. And since Panasonic doesn't make it anymore, a lot of new Seimitsus now come with Panasonics. Or Panasonics come with Omrons. The only difference being the American lever, which the American lever uses cherry switches. Yeah, they say cherry on them. And I believe these ones, what do they use? I actually am not sure what these use. They also use, I believe, a different kind than Omron, though I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, these are the 2 most popular ones you'll find, one of them more so than the other. There are a couple of sticks in the last generation that did come with Seimitsus, and typically they aren't mounted like this. Typically they are, I have another Seimitsu that I can show off. I have 2 others. Typically they're mounted this way. This is actually the LS3210. This is generally what you would find most common. This is the old one with Panasonic switches, but they are very different. These will be covered in their own separate videos when I do Sanwa sticks, Seimitsu sticks. I'll cover each individual brand in different videos as kind of like a breakdown thing. So just quick, this is just the quickest overview possible that I can do for everything in the allotted time that I have for this video. Because again, I keep saying I don't want it to be over 30 minutes, and then it becomes over 30 minutes. So this one isn't going to be over 20 minutes. Got him. Now, the second most popular type of lever, debatably, it's debatable, but I would say the Korean levers. The bat top levers are probably the second most common you will see in traditional arcade sticks. That excludes the Mixbox and the Hitbox and all the other ones that don't involve actual levers. The difference between these is that, first off, you have to attach a hot and a ground to each one of the micro switches that this activates. The second thing is that they don't have what is called a restrictor gate. Their restrictor gate is different. So on the bottom of these 2, that's not balanced very well. On the bottoms of these two, they have a restrictor gate. They can be octagonal, so they have 8 sides. They can be a circle, I believe. I think they make a circle one. Or they can be the most common one, which is a square, which is you just have 4 corners. This is typically what you'll see on any Japanese stick, is a square gate. And that just basically, the restrictor gate stops the stick from going any farther than it needs to push and activate the micro switch. Korean levers are a little bit different. Korean levers, this little shaft here is a restrictor gate. It's a circle gate. These ones actually do have a circle gate. There are no corners on it. And to add tension, there is a silicon grommet that goes inside of the stick. That causes the retention, that causes the tension that you get when you move the stick. Whereas these ones usually use like a 2-pound spring, though some of them you can get 4, 8. I even knew a guy who had a 10-pound spring in his. And that's really the biggest difference between the Asian levers. Now, the American lever is very much different. There's 2, I think there's Hap, and then there's Lorenzo, I think, Industries or whatever they're called. And these ones are very different. First off, they are much bulkier than any of the sticks that I have in my possession. They're very bulky, and they, like I said, use cherry switches. The other thing too is that their restrictor, they don't have a restrictor gate. They just have this square. I haven't really tested the American parts out yet. I have a bunch of them. And when I do my stick and button breakdown videos, I will be going over each individual brand that I have, like the most popular out of them. I have both of the most common American sticks, and then I have a bunch of Japanese and Korean ones. So now that we really got all of that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to install each one of these, minus the American lever. Most American levers, unfortunately, are just too damn big to fit in a Japanese stick. You can get these installed in a thicker arcade case if you have one, but really, I don't have a case at the moment that can fit these, so I don't know. I can't really install them at the moment, especially the buttons. The buttons are also very long. The other issue is that these just aren't that common. I've been to several Evos now. Last year was my 3rd one, and I've been to things like SCR, NCR, and I just don't see American levers too often to justify showing how to install these. I'm sure there's a video out there of how to install the American parts, but that will come in a separate video when I get the know-how to do that. So for the purposes of this video, we're only going to be sticking to the 3 most common that I've seen. And of course, now that we've talked about the sticks and I really kind of gave the condensed version of that, we're just going to go over the same tools that I used in the last video, which is the iFixit 64-bit kit. This thing is amazing. I said I was going to put B-roll and I don't think I did. So there will be actual B-roll. I made sure to get that first this time. The needle nose pliers, which you will actually definitely need if you're going to be installing one of these sticks. And then of course your other couple of screwdrivers to open up the back just in case the stick actually needs a long thin screwdriver. The last thing other than the tools is we're going to be showing you how to do the artwork, and I already have custom artwork that I made for the Obsidian. I got that through Focus Attack. They do a very good job. You can order Plexis for almost any kind of arcade stick, which the Plexi is basically just this plastic top. It would be this clear thing that you see right here. Yeah, it has the cutouts for the buttons and the stick, and that would just, you would replace this top part here because this glossy part does come off. And since this is a solid color with the Obsidian and several other ones that don't have a clear Plexi already, you will have to take that off and then get a brand new one to put in its place. That way you can actually fit artwork. This is just something that I whipped up a long time ago when I wanted to make a Makoto stick. A little bit dirty because it's been in there and it's collected dust. But that one will be at the end of the video. That'll be the last half when I'm showing you how to actually install artwork. So you already know how to open up your stick. That's the first step. Because in order to, or actually, how about this? We'll install the artwork first because it involves you basically having to remove the stick anyway and take out the buttons. So the reason why in the last one I said color code your buttons is because when you do open up this stick, a lot of the times you will have to take the Plexi off, and that involves pulling all of your buttons off. The only exception, well actually no, there really is no exception. The artwork usually goes underneath the rim of the button because there's about a millimeter of overhang so that they sit flush with the, so that they actually go over the Plexi and it's just cleaner looking. There is you have to pull out all the buttons and you have to take the Plexi off so that you can put the new artwork underneath and then put the new Plexi on, or reuse it if it's a clear Plexi, and then snap your buttons back in and plug them in. So again, take a picture of it, write it down on a piece of paper and stick it into the case. That way you remember which colored wires go to which button. So we're going to I'm just going to quickly open up the stick. I'm going to show you everything that you need to do process-wise to switch the artwork out on this, and then I will tell you exactly how to wire each and every one of these sticks, which isn't very difficult. Now, this is gonna time lapse, but I should mention that you open it in the same way. What I didn't mention when opening up the backs of your sticks in the last video is that sometimes, like on this one and on the Panthera Evo, and I think no, not the Fighting Edge, but on some sticks they have a mic jack, and that mic jack will be connected probably down on the base plate. Make sure you don't just yank this thing off because you really don't want to rip that wire. It messes up just everything. If you want to be able to use a microphone and shit talk everybody online, then don't yank. I'll show you right here. I'm going to slow down after I get these last couple screws out. Wow, this thing is just being a bitch. So as you can see on the Obsidian, if you've seen my review of it, right here is where the mic jack is. So you're going to pull it off, and you see how there's a wire connected to it? You see how there's a wire connected right there? Don't pull by the wires. Let me flip it over so it's easier to see. Don't yank it by the wires. There's these little things that you can grip on the sides, and you can just wiggle it out. And there you go. You actually got on some of these. I should have shown the Obsidian in the last video, but I just didn't. I don't know why. But yeah, so that one, make sure to reattach that, by the way. I mean, unless you don't want to use the mic jack, but I found that if you plug it into a PS4, it messes with your audio settings and everything. Or at least it messes with mine. Refocus it a little bit better. There we go. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to show you how to take the stick out. You should already know how to do this, as I think I did show it. No, I haven't actually. If you don't know how to remove the stick, basically you're going to take a flathead, you're going to stick it into the slot right here, and this is going to be for all Sanwas. Seimitsus are going to be the same way. They also have that same little flathead screw kind of thing right here. You're going to grab the ball top on the other end, so there's going to be some more B-roll of this, but you grab the ball top on one end, stick it in here, and you're just going to twist them opposite, and it doesn't take much force, and this will just screw off. It'll just screw out, and there you go. You've taken that part off, and that is basically the hardest part of taking out the stick. Now all you got to do is just, you take this right here. This is the 5-pin connector for your stick. Even on the Korean lever, which I will show you specifically after this, because we're going to be installing the Korean lever. I'm just going to pull this out and then re-show you how to put this back in, but basically it's the opposite of taking it out if you have a Sanwa or Seimitsu.
just because they have the 5-pin connector right there. It's pretty straightforward. But basically it has this little thing that hooks onto the 5-pin on the stick. So you just kind of wiggle it a little bit and give it a little force on one side till it loosens. There you go. You've disconnected it, and it actually will. There is only one way for this to go in. You can't accidentally put it upside down because most of the time they have this little tab coming out, and it will actually stop you from being able to put it in the wrong way. Sometimes it won't, but generally just remember that if it's there, there's going to be a little notch that it hooks onto on the bottom of the stick. So there you go. Next, there's going to be 4 screws, and you just take these 4 screws off and you've removed your stick. So let's just speed that up. I don't know if you really have to do it on here, but I have seen some of my base plates. I'll actually show you as soon as I pull this out. So you get these 4 screws out, your stick comes out just like that. And this one is also a Sanwa, by the way. But stuff like this will happen, I think, if you have too much pressure, or if you only do what I do sometimes, and I lose these screws all the time, but I'll put 2 down only. And then I think just the flex bends these metal plates, because these things are hard to bend. And I managed to bend them. Also, the other thing that I do is if you have extra dust washers, is that just to keep more dirt from getting in there, I put one underneath that's between that and the stick. And then you put another one on top of the arcade stick. That's just generally what I do with all of them, because I have dozens of those things lying around. So you already know what to do here. You're just gonna pull all of these buttons off, and you're gonna remember which one goes to where. So we're just gonna unplug all these buttons, and then in some cases you can just pop these buttons off like I showed you in the Panthera. But in this stick's case, you don't have to. You can actually just push them off with the Plexi. I usually just take the Plexi and I'll push it off, but before we do that, after you pull the buttons off here, there's going to be 6 screws on the front. Typically there are screws that you have to take off on the front so that the Plexi will come off. Don't try and push them out like this. You're just going to break your Plexi. Now these ones are all coming out because these ones aren't, to my knowledge, yeah, no, these ones aren't quick disconnects. Like, they aren't the easy quick disconnects with the little tab in them. Hori is a little strange because what we're going to be doing is, because I use Hori Hayabusas in this stick, even in these ones, even in the Sanwas, for some reason this stick has very easy to remove quick disconnects. I don't know why, but it does. So whatever, that's how the world works, I guess. See these little screws here? There's typically only 6. Some of them may have 5, some of them I think have 4, but yeah, generally you're just gonna go ahead and you're gonna unscrew this, and you're just gonna do it. It's just like taking off the back plate. You're just gonna unscrew these, and then you sometimes can just pull it off like that, but with this stick, it's just kind of a hassle. Sometimes it's just easier to go from the back and push through these buttons. And when you push through that, there you go. You will actually push the Plexi off with the buttons, and then all you have to do is just pop the buttons out like I showed you when you're replacing buttons in the last video. All you have to do is just kind of squeeze them and push them out. And yeah, we're almost done here actually. So sometimes it'll just come out, but with this stick, because it is kind of a tight fit, sometimes you just want to do something like this. Okay, here it goes. And there we go. See what I mean? This is a very tight fit. I don't know why, but the Plexi that I have is an even tighter fit. So now we're just going to do the same thing that we did with the Panthera in the last video. And there we have it. This Plexi is basically not needed anymore. So we can set that aside.
Set all the buttons aside. And here we go. Now, I'm going to show you how to replace the artwork. So basically, all you're going to do, you put your artwork in between the stick and the Plexi. So just like how I did there, you line it up with the buttons, the cutouts. If you get it from, I believe Arcade Shock also does artwork printouts that you can use between a Plexi. But you just line, it'll have the holes pre-cut for you. So you just take you do this, you put it between Plexi, and this one is actually a much better fit than it used to be. I don't know what wizardry that is, but I don't care. And you're just gonna re-screw it like you're screwing a black plate back on. Don't over tighten these screws, by the way. I've done that with I have a lot of the fusions, the 8-arc and Quanba fusions. They have this issue where some people, when they're changing the Plexi out or when they were putting the Plexi back on, I don't know why they took the Plexi off in the first place. Maybe they had artwork and then they switched it back to the original. But if you tighten it too much around here, it will start to crack the Plexi, because Plexi can be pretty fragile if you drop something heavy on it, or if you are a little too forceful with it, or if you over tighten your screws. I'm not going to demonstrate that because I don't want to spend $15 on another Plexi for this thing. So I'm just going to warn you, don't do that. All right, now we got that secure and in place and everything is even. Really, there's no way that you can really mess that up unless you printed your artwork wrong and your holes are off center or something, but that's mostly on you. So what we're gonna do is put the buttons back in. Now, one thing that I didn't mention before is that some of them, Quanba specifically, have these little cutouts that you can see where these tabs are supposed to fit. So you're just gonna line those up and you're just gonna push them in. Because this thing, like I believe I did mention in the button mod video, the first part, that some sticks, they don't necessarily go on top of the metal. The tabs don't push into the metal. They kind of attach themselves to the Plexi. And I believe that is the case for most sticks with the Plexi. I think only ones that have a very thin Plexi and metal that basically make up the thickness of this one, because this is a very thick Plexi. I think those ones generally will have that, where it actually, you have to take it out from the back. And that's basically your artwork replaced right there. So that's the first part of this tutorial done. That's the first part of this done, which is how to change your artwork out. And now I'm going to show you how to install a new stick, which I'm just going to show you how to do the Sanwa first, which is not going to go into detail. It's pretty straightforward what you need to do, but just for the sake of having it complete, that's what I'm going to do. Now, I said take a picture of it, but I remember I've done the mods on this stick so much, I remember the colors. So if you can remember them just fine, then you don't really need the reference. When installing a new stick, like I said, I like to put one of these little dust washers in between the stick and the lever. And generally, the way that you know this is going to go in, where this is going to go in is wherever the wire is coming from. Just remember where your stick goes, because if you're going like this and you manage to get the wire to hook that way, your directions are going to be reversed basically. So all you're going to do is, like I said, you can't put it in this way because it physically will not let you. This is not going to work unless you want to destroy your PCB in the process and then you have a broken Sanwa. There's going to be this little thing right here that's going to hook on and there you go. That's how you hook a stick in. That's how you hook the lever in. And then you're just gonna line up the 4 holes there. There's 4 holes, 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top. And you're just gonna screw them in the way that you took the screws out. That's basically how you install a Sanwa. Of course, you also would put, you know, you would do all this crap too. You'd put that, screw in the ball top, if I can get the ball top to actually screw in. And then just like how you loosen the ball top, you're gonna take your flathead, you're gonna stick it in there, and then you're just gonna turn it. Your left hand's gonna be going clockwise, and then your right hand's gonna be going counterclockwise. That's how you tighten it. And then you reverse that to loosen it. Now, actually, and it's gonna be the same way with Seimitsu. Let me grab a Seimitsu right here. The only difference is that they make flat plate levers. They make flat plates for the lever for Seimitsu that look similar to this. I've seen them, but this is the one that I have that lets me mount them normally like a Sanwa, because like I said, if you have this one, they have to go into these 4 screws, and if you want to mount it that way, you actually have to have the Plexi off, because these 4 screws, they mount in from the top. So instead of screwing them from back here, you would put your stick in, you would hold down the other side, and then you would take the 4 screws that you have and you would screw them into these 4 holes here, and it mounts on the top. But yeah, so what's going to happen is you're going to stick it in there, and generally they will fit. This one doesn't really have the mounting capability with this plate, so I can't really show you there. But generally, most plates that support it, you would be able to screw them in like that. And that's only because the way that this supports Seimitsu mounting is through these holes right here. And you're just going to take these 4 screws off. So if I wanted to do that, I would just take the base plate off. You know, you would just take your Phillips and you take these 4 screws off just like this, and then you'd stick them in there, screw them in through the top. I will get B-roll of that, but I'm not going to do that here, and I'll probably do it really quick because I had to do this before, and yeah, I don't know. It's pretty straightforward when you have to do it that way. You just take the Plexi off. You take the Plexi off the way that I showed you, and those 4 holes that were there where the stick was, that's where you mount Seimitsu's. Unless, of course, you got the Seimitsu flat plate lever, the flat plate here, then you'd be totally fine. So, with that being said, I'm going to move this out of the way really quick because we're going to talk about a Korean lever. This is a Crown 309 MJ. This is a Korean lever that is specifically made to fit in Japanese sticks. So ones that don't have the clearance for a typical Japanese long shaft, which looks like this. This is the oh, I can't remember the name. I'll put the name up in the on the screen. So as you can see, there's a couple of differences here. One, the mounting plate is different. This is a traditional Japanese mounting plate, or a Korean one. It still fits in the same 4 holes. Generally they do, but the difference here is that you can see the actual gate sticks up out of the stick. This is a longer shaft than this one. And the reason why that is because typically the hole for a Japanese stick is 24 millimeters, I want to say. Yeah, it's 24. And the space required to fit this is 35 millimeters. So you could go one of 2 ways. You could take something that drills through Plexi and drills through metal, and you could size that to 35. I've seen people do it. You know, all the Korean players who use Kwanba sticks, they have had that modification. Same thing with the razors and the Hori fighting edges that you see, like was it John Ding? John Ding uses a fighting edge, I think, or a razor, and he has his modified for a traditional Korean lever. But for us people who like Japanese sticks and don't want to do that to our stick, we have the Crown 309 MJ and the Crown Japanese levers in general, or the Crown Japanese compatible levers. And what that does is it gives you the same functionality as something like this. It's just that they shorten the shaft. So as you can see how thin that is compared to how thick that boy is. So they basically function the same. This one's more resistant. It has a higher resistance silicon grommet in it. But they all mount the same way. As you can see, I have I have this special cable in it that lets me wire it. So what you need to figure out, and this is a lot of trial and error, it still irks me how Korean levers work with how you're supposed to mount these, because this cable, you have to figure out which one is going to be down. So however you're going to go into your stick, that is going to be that's going to be up, and then this is going to be down. So you want up to be facing towards you when you have the stick in your lap. So this green wire right here is going to have to be facing you like this. It's really dumb, but it's really dumb. It's a lot of trial and error. So if you wire it up, just wire it starting from one corner and then just go around, and then you're just gonna have to play around with it until it actually works. God, it is very hard to explain in less than 30 minutes how to do this crap. All right, so like I said, there's gonna be a lot of trial and error. What I usually do is that I plug it in the way that it's usually the way that it is. There's a wiring diagram usually that shows you how these things go. And then what I'll do is that I'll actually keep it outside of the stick. I'll plug my stick in while it's open like this, and then I'll hold it the way that I'm going to mount it. And then I'll go into a PlayStation menu or something like that, and then press down, press up, press left, press right, and make sure that the directions are correct. And then if they're not, you unplug the stick, you rewire it the way that it needs to be rewired, and then you test that until you got in this position, up, down, left, right. And then you're gonna take that and you're gonna mount it the same way that it goes into the stick. And there you go. That's how it would mount in that way. And then, yeah, this right here. Okay, so this right here is the wire harness that you need to be able to connect it to a 5-pin quick disconnect, or a 5-pin harness, just like a Korean stick, or just like a Sanwa or Seimitsu. As you can see, if I flip it over, they're virtually the same thing. Now it's a little blurry, but they're virtually the same thing. So it just makes it so it's more compatible with Japanese arcade sticks. So the way that we're gonna mount this is we have to actually take apart the stick. You can't just twist it off, because this is just one solid piece. The bat top and the shaft are one solid piece. So this is the C or an E clamp. I call it an E clamp just because it looks like an E. What you need to do is, and let me get in closer so you guys can actually see what I'm doing. Let me focus that better for you. There we go. We have this little clamp right here, as you can see, and that keeps the whole stick together. So what I like to do is I'll take a flat head and I stick it into one of these little gaps here, and then I just twist it until the thing comes out, just like that. And then what happens is that we have our little actuator here, we have our dust washer, and we have our lever, and then there's our stick. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take all these parts and move them out of the way, because we're going to mount it into our arcade stick now. So one thing that is easier about these is that you can just lay the arcade stick flat. You don't have to deal with the lever and having to do this balancing act. So while you're screwing the thing back in, and because I use a Korean lever on this stick anyway, I'm not going to be taking it off. I'm just going to be keeping it in there. So what we're going to do is we just mount it in the same way. The same 4 screws go in the same 4 places. And let's just get that installed real quick. The only thing is that sometimes there are clearance issues with Japanese sticks. So this doesn't necessarily hurt it, but with the micro switches, I tend to bend the pins away. The reason this is so horribly bent is because of the, actually I believe this, no, it went this way. The reason why it bent so badly is because this has been in the Hori Fighting Edge, and the Hori Fighting Edge has almost no clearance. It's just this giant wall for the cable compartment, and that just, yeah. It is a pain in the ass to try and mount a Korean stick in those. It's a pain in the ass to mount these in general in Japanese sticks, but in Korean sticks like the Make Stick IST case that I have, it's a breeze, it's easy. Then again, you can just pull them out in one piece. You don't actually have to do what I do here. That's a different story for a different time. Hopefully this straightens out the actual metal plate too, because this thing's metal base plate has been really bent, and I'm hoping that this will straighten it out when I put all 4 screws in and leave it in there for like a year. Now that we've got that installed, next I'm going to show you how to put this all back together. We're going to put the actuator there. We're going to take this and the dust washer. Now the difference between the Korean and Japanese ones is that the dust washer is the exact size needed for the shaft, whereas the Japanese one, there's a clear hole. It's clearly bigger. That's generally how it goes. They make these ones also fit on Seimitsu's if they want to do it just like a solid, yeah. So next we just slide it in the way that we normally would. The way that it came out, it'll just slide in like that. And then I'm going to prop it up like that, and I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to show you exactly what I do. So what I like to do, which is some people, they just push it in like that. I can't get it to do that at all. What I'll do is I'll prop it up like that, and then I'll take the needle nose pliers and then clamp it on like that. These things have a horrible habit of springing and flying across the room, so these can get lost pretty easy. I've had to search my whole room for these sometimes when I was first installing Korean sticks because of that. But yeah, just always make sure that you have a finger or something there so that it doesn't fly away. Or sometimes when you're putting them back in like that, they will actually not be aligned and they'll shoot off anyway. So, and then the last part is you're going to connect it just like you did the Sanwas, which you're just going to clip it in like that, and there you go. You now have a Korean lever mounted in your Japanese arcade stick, and it's pretty simple. Just more steps involved to get a Korean stick installed onto a Japanese one. And then the last thing that you're going to do is you're just going to close up your case. Remember to plug this guy back in. And these things only go in one way. There's these 2 little things that stick out and they slot in right here. They can only go in one way. You can't really force it in the other way. It won't let you unless you want to damage your board. Unless you really feel like damaging it, then you know, you can totally go for it. But there, so it'll usually fit in just like that. And then we're gonna take our screws and just gonna screw it back in the way that we took it apart. And also, don't over tighten them, just finger tight, just until it stops really giving any resistance is when you want to stop screwing them in. Don't over tighten them. It is plastic, I made that mistake with my Fusion Sapphire where I was over tightening it, or I had it at a wrong angle and it snapped one of those pegs off, and for a while that screw just did not screw back in because of that. And then I started doing stuff. I super glued it, and then I stuck a toothpick in there to strengthen the broken mounting point, and put more super glue in there, and then re-drilled it, or not re-drilled it, but re-screwed the thing back in, and now it's actually fine. As long as I don't over tighten it, it's not gonna break on me again. But yeah, I remember that day when I was re-screwing and doing mods on that. I was re-screwing it back in, heard a giant snap, and I went, oh no, what did I break? And this was the early days. This is like the second year I had my first arcade stick, so this is like 2012. But yeah, there we go. She's all done, ready to go and play people online. Now, the reason why I showed you the Korean one, of course, because it's the most difficult, but the Sanwa one basically goes in the same way you took it out, so that should be pretty straightforward. But with that, yeah, nothing else really to talk about. There's a shirt store. There's an apparel store. I'm getting another some more artwork done for another shirt. I don't know when that's going to be available, but you know, streamlabs.com, Hurtbox. I don't know exactly the link, but yeah, we have shirts, coffee mug. There's a coffee mug on there, but yeah, if you buy that, that helps us out. We have the Patreon, subscribe on YouTube, you know, hit the bell notification for notifications when I post videos. Like, comment, subscribe. I already said that. Like, comment, share the video, and that's pretty much it. The third part of this I may do later next week, and that'll be troubleshooting things like broken buttons or a messed up stick or, you know, something or other. I'm gonna figure out exactly the most common types of problems, because there's not very many problems that I've had outside of wiring things wrong, like this, wiring upside down. But I've never generally had serious malfunctions. I did have an issue with a buddy of mine's stick. He sent it over to me, and it was an Injustice stick that the buttons weren't working properly, and those were dead switches, so I had to replace all of them. But yeah, generally there isn't any sort of major malfunctions in these, and if there are, it's usually just replace a part. So with that out of the way, thank you everybody for watching. I hope this video and the last one were very helpful, or somewhat helpful, in you getting your new arcade stick and wanting to mod it. As you can see here, I put in the Hori Hayabusas, my favorite buttons personally, but you can do this with almost any other button. Sanwa, Seimitsu, Crown. There's just different, they're pretty straightforward, the different installation methods. Same thing with the sticks. So on that note, that's it for me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.